Are you going to get thrown into jail for doing a low pass? Let's talk to Joey Johnson, a DPE, on this episode of the Taking Off podcast. Okay, nothing like the magical six take on this. I'm Dan Milliken.
And I'm Christy Schaefer. Dan, what are you doing on your days off? Doing low passes over airports?
Well, I'm not. But it's funny is that I read a post on Facebook today where somebody was showing their low pass. And I'm like,
no.
And it made me think again because, like, I thought, well, is it illegal? Is it not? You know, and of course, nobody's getting thrown into jail by the FAA anyway. They can't do that. But, you know, I want to know. So that was, as we were planning the podcast today, and I thought, well, Joey's coming. Joey will have an answer. He's a DPE.
Oh, he knows everything.
He knows everything. So, Joey Johnson, thanks for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
Joey, is it wrong to do a low pass over an uncontrolled field?
Well, I think there's a guy that's in hot water right now. It's Trent.
But
trying to land in a field.
But that was off airport, and what they're getting him for is, you know, the within 500 feet of people, property, blah blah blah, and reckless as well. But those are the two that he's throwing, not the low pass. But you know, people at an airport are doing, you know, low passes and proud of it and posting it on Facebook.
True, and I've done some, shall we say, case study or review, reading on that
From the cockpit.
Yeah. And there has been some situations in the past where people have been reported for flying low over to the airport, and the FAA has taken action on them because the reasoning is that it wasn't necessary for the takeoff or the landing. They were basically doing, as you stated, showing off, and the FAA cited them for that. So it is possible that you could get into some hot water. It largely depends on what was the justification for it. And, you know, was it hazardous and reckless in the eyes of the beholder, meaning the FAA, and the inspector assigned to it? So there's always the potential for that. I'm not saying that it is, you know, straight illegal. Maybe you were doing a wildlife pass, you know, some airports have a lot of wildlife.
I was just thinking Bridgeport. I've done that before.
Yeah.
Where there were deer kind of on the side of the runway. I didn't want to land, so I did a low pass. They scared off, and I stayed in the pattern, came around and landed.
And the post in question that I read this morning was, he said, here I am doing looking for deer. So
oh, wow.
He did say that.
Right.
But yeah, the air quotes was pretty obvious by the context.
See, when you post it on social media in a public light like that, that's really irresponsible.
You're putting it in the court of public opinion.
Right.
Of course.
You're inviting yourself.
And you are inviting the litigation, basically.
Yeah.
Well, and I know for a fact the FSDOs do indeed look at social media from time to time. Often they'll get forwarded stuff, but it happens.
I mean, look at Brian.
Oh, well, yeah. So, well, that's interesting. Anyway, but that was something I thought about this morning having you come on. How is life you are a DPE, but you're also a line check airman for a major airline, and you're running a scholarship thing. And we're going to talk about all three of these things. But, you know, how is life as a DPE these days?
Well, it's just as busy as it's always been. We are getting some new DPEs, but they don't hold all of the qualifications. You have to be a designated examiner for at least a year before you can do CFI initials. So it has provided some relief, the new designees that have come online. But the demand still continues. The schools are not letting up with the push for pilots. And my phone still rings nonstop. My busiest week, given the fact that we can now do 3 full rides in a day. Now, it's hard to do that, to be honest with you, unless, of course, they're shortened rides. Now, what I mean by that is
it's a multi-year
add-on,
yeah.
something of that effect. Then you can do it. You can do it. If you start early enough in the day, and I do, I'll start at 8 in the morning, and I'll do 3 commercial multi-add-ons in a day. But at the end of the day, I'm worn out, you know, and I'm wrapping up around 6 p.m. And I think the most I've ever given in a continuous segment was 14 in a week. 14 rides.
Wow.
Wow. Okay.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
I mean, that's a lot. Even as a flight instructor, that's a lot of lessons.
Yeah.
Well, and let's talk.
That's 2 a day for 7 days. Is basically what it came down to.
Yeah, you know, and there's a lot of people that think that you guys are just, you know, it's some kind of racket. You're taking cash, you're doing all this stuff, you're charging whatever you want, all this kind of thing. But what they don't realize is that for many of you guys, I know like in another DPE that I'm friends with, he takes a pay cut every time he does a check ride.
To a degree,
From his day
I
job.
could actually make more money at American on an overtime trip or an overtime assignment at the flight academy than I would be given check rides.
So I think people need to keep that in mind as they go, oh, the DP racket. Well, these guys actually take pay cuts to come and do the check rides.
And it's not just that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but as a DP, to become a DPE, you actually have to bankroll a lot of the training and stuff like that yourself.
Actually, all of it, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So like, it's just like becoming a pilot, you have to pay for that. And to become a DPE, you actually have to pay for the training, pay for the accommodations, pay for the courses. So you're actually putting a lot of your own
mandatory stuff that they require.
mandatory
That's
stuff.
correct. That's correct. So once you've gotten all the minimum requirements met, and you apply, so to speak, and you get selected or interviewed, then they'll come out and they'll ride with you. So you're paying for that. And then if you get appointed, then you're going to Oklahoma City for a week, and you're going to pay for your hotel and all your meals and expenses associated with that. And then the class itself, there's a fee. And then annually and biannually, there's recurrent training required that you have to maintain. And the recurrent course, of course, I have that coming up this year. I think it's 240, and it's a Zoom course, and it's all day. So you're online all day.
Yeah.
240. Now that's not a great big expense by comparison. But you do have a minimum number of hours. It has to be flown. And then if you're a multi-engine examiner, each aircraft that you do, you have to have 5 hours in an airplane. And when I was new, there was occasionally a period of time where they would call me and they'd have a twin that I had not had time in. And I'd say, well, I can't do that right. I don't have 5 hours in that airplane. So as the demand grew, they began to offer that, at a discounted rate. But before, you were just paying it out of pocket.
Yeah, but you're still having to pay for it, even at a discounted rate.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I think what people don't understand is that there is a lot of costs associated with just being a DPE. And let's not forget supply and demand. Just being honest. That is a part of it as well.
It's a huge part of it. So,
how many people actually take advantage of the free check ride if you go through an FAA examiner compared to signing up for
I think
DPs?
the problem there is not so much the people that want to take advantage of it. It again comes down to supply and demand. There is certainly a huge demand of CFI applicants who would rather go with the FAA and not have to pay the fees associated with it. But the supply of inspectors available, qualified, ready, and current that can do it is much like the DPE.
I've never met the pilot candidate who would prefer an FAA examiner over a designated.
Well, I tend to agree with you, but by the same time on social media, you see, well, I would much rather do it with the FAA and not have to pay that enormous fee. So certainly they're putting the word out there, but I don't know that it actually happens.
Well, honestly, I think a lot of it comes down to just timing. I would rather do it with like you as a DPE, for example, because it takes a long time to get on your schedule. It might take a couple months, but that's better than 6 months or 9 months or whatever.
That's correct.
With the FAA. So.
All right, so let's other DPE questions right now. What's hot right now with DPEs? What are issues you're finding on check rides?
It's hot.
Yeah.
what's
the deal with
It's
check rides in
107
August
degrees.
in Texas?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's been an issue. The weather, of course. Oftentimes they'll call you and they have a Cessna 150 or a Tomahawk, and they want to do their check ride. And that's an airplane that if you're not starting at 6 o'clock in the morning,
It's never going to get off the ground.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? Unless, of course, the candidate is a very small. I consider myself average in size. I fluctuate between 180, 190. But when you got an airplane that has a useful load of 400 pounds total,
Yeah.
And you got a 230-pound student. Now
you're not getting off the ground with enough gas to even finish the ride. So that's a problem. Or they'll want to bring a light sport, and a lot of the light sports have limitations on payload as well. So that's one of the problems. From a proficiency standpoint, probably the biggest thing that I'm seeing right now is just the aptitude. We're running into with the demand and the push for pilots right now and all of the social media, and I don't mean to blame social media, but it is a large part of it. Anybody can be a pilot, and that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
So you're seeing more applicants who really aren't ready.
True.
Is that what you're saying?
That's true. Yeah, they're not really, and that comes
Or
down,
have the aptitude for it.
have the aptitude for it. You know, just there's in times past we would say, well, maybe you should look into something different. You're just not cut out to do this, and there is a certain amount of that may ring true. I'm not saying it is absolutely true. I'm saying, but it could be if you don't have the foresight, the mechanical aptitude, and along with the intellectual aptitude.
Situational awareness.
Situational awareness is
huge.
huge, absolutely huge when it comes to flying an airplane. You have to project what's coming before it actually happens. It's almost like being a fortune teller to some degree. It's like you're planning ahead, right?
Or
what was-
meteorologists in the sky, lifetime.
Yeah,
A lot of times.
What was the Boy Scout motto? Always prepared. or
Always
something
be
like that?
prepared, yeah.
Always be prepared, and we tend to forget that when flying airplanes.
Well, okay. So we were talking this morning, Christy and I. A lot of us suffer the imposter syndrome when it comes to piloting, and so for all of those that are listening and suffering imposter syndrome, oh my gosh, is that me? I don't have aptitude to be a pilot, even though I'm a CFI or whatever. You know, what are the specific aptitude issues you're seeing? In other words, if I'm going, oh my gosh, do I have this disease? Well, let me look at the what are the traits? Give me the traits of the aptitude diseased pilot.
Well, I mean,
I'm putting you on the spot.
no,
here.
it's not so much that you're putting me on the spot. It's just, you recognize it right away. Generally, when it's one of those things that you see it, you recognize it, but to try to describe it, it's really hard to do.
I get that. As a flight instructor, I've run across students before that had that. And it's not just one thing. Like I had a student when I was flight instructing with the flight school. He just had a bad attitude. He had a very hazardous attitude, and he wound up damaging an aircraft. Fortunately, not under my certificate, but like he just had it's not going to happen to me. I can just go do what I want to do.
So the
kind of
invincible
attitude.
hazardous
Yeah,
attitude.
he thought he was invincible. We also have people where, I hate to say it, they can't connect the dots. And it happens in the airline world as well. They can get through all of their training, all the way through CFI. They could get their 1,500 hours, make it to the airlines, and they still can't connect those dots. And it starts showing through their 121 training.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a specific, now that you've kind of put me on the spot. I don't think that take that
Well, I
in a
like
bad,
putting people on the spot.
well, I don't
so.
take it in a bad manner, but I'm just trying to think of a specific incident. But you're doing, is it the applicant or is it the instructor? That's you're trying to figure that piece of it out.
It's a little bit of both, in my opinion, because
Sometimes.
it's the instructor's responsibility to identify that.
That's correct.
Yeah,
when
but then some people just don't have the aptitude to fly.
right.
And I guess that's what I'm talking about. I want to. What are the traits of that person? Because I want to, I don't want somebody listening who wants to be a pilot or is knee deep in student training to go, oh my gosh, I don't have the aptitude. What does it look like to not have the aptitude?
Well, I can give you I can cite some examples of things that I've seen.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
And then you try to decide, is that the instructor's fault or was this the applicant?
Okay.
Okay. So we have an applicant who has shown up for a private pilot, let's say. Okay. And we're doing the walk around and we're just pointing out the big pieces of the airplane. This is the wing. This is the fuselage, and you point to the rudder, and the applicant says, well, that's the tail. Well, specifically, what component are we referring to here?
What is this flight control surface?
Yeah, what is this surface? What does it do? And, the answer is, I'm not sure, but I just know what to look for.
Well, in that case, that sounds like instructor.
That sounds like an instructor, right?
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're going for a private pilot check ride, you're probably around 65 hours on average. You should know what a rudder is.
You would think. One would think. But I've also...
But you never know. Instructors could.
But take that
never
to the next
cover
level
that.
now and point to the component in front of the rudder that it's attached to, the vertical stabilizer, and a commercial applicant can't identify that.
Oh, my.
Now, do we have an instructor problem or do we have an applicant problem?
I would say applicant problem, because even if you have an instructor, as an applicant, it's your responsibility to learn that information.
So that would be an example of some things that
Okay.
I'm talking about, because it's like, okay, you're at this level applying for this particular certificate.
I have a theory.
I hold your theory.
Okay.
Because I've got a situation I'm curious about. Is because this pilot had just had gotten his private, so he's through and he's doing his first long cross country. Goes to a Class C airport. Class C airport on departure tells him to line up and wait, runway 19. And the pilot had never heard that phrase before, never seen that phrase before, didn't know what to do. Like, can I now cross that threshold, or I'm not cleared to take off? And been told that's what you do. So is that pilot or is that instructor?
And is a freshly minted private pilot?
Freshly minted.
I would say it to some degree that's on the instructor.
I would say a little bit of both
Yeah.
in that situation.
Okay, that was me.
Right?
I had never heard line up and wait. I'm sorry, did I say land and hold short?
No. You said line up and
you
wait.
said line up and wait.
I'd never heard line up and wait. The instructor had never said that. I had no clue
Position
what
and
that was.
hold.
Well, they didn't say that
for,
either.
For years, and that's the line up and wait is an ICAO standard.
Right.
Because in the U.S. for the years it was position and hold.
But that phrase never came up once during my private.
Yeah, okay, so that's a little bit of a unique situation. I mean, I get that because that's usually not something that a small GA aircraft would get.
So taking it to the next level, let's go to the mechanical aptitude.
Okay.
Today's generation is not coming up, putting the change back on their bicycle, mowing yards with a push mower for a living.
Right.
Checking the oil in their
checking
cars.
the oil in the car.
Right.
Things of that nature because they're driving an electric car.
Right.
We've all seen the videos of the person who's trying to put gas in a Tesla. Right.
Oh my,
Right.
yeah.
Right? So where's the mechanical aptitude in that individual, right? You're driving an electric car, and right, yet you think it needs gas. And I use that to kind of highlight what I'm referring to. So when we begin oral discussions regarding the mechanics of the aircraft, say the engine, for example, one of my favorite questions is I'll start off with a discussion about the electrical system and ultimately lead in the power plant. Tell me about the electrical system on the airplane. What does it consist of? We have a battery, we have an alternator or a generator. What's the voltage? What's the ratings? The kind of thing. Okay, so we're flying along, and the alternator fails. How do we know? Is there any indication in the cockpit? If we continue to fly the aircraft with a failed alternator, what is the likely outcome? What's going
Right.
to happen, right? Ultimately, you and I all know that the battery is eventually going to drain. All of electrical is gone now. So now my next question is, okay, for whatever reason you didn't land, you flew until the battery exhausted itself. Is the engine going to fail?
Right.
And oftentimes the answer I get is yes, it will.
Oh no.
Absolutely, it's going to fail.
They don't know about magnetos.
They don't
They don't understand the system.
the difference
Yeah.
in the two systems.
So is that instructor? Is it student? And that one could go either way.
It could go either way.
So my theory, and I could be wrong, and I'm probably going to get comments on this, but my theory is that just in our society these days, with the social media and the technology and stuff we have, so many people they're used to getting spoon-fed information. I mean, we literally get, like
Instant gratification.
instant gratification, and I mean, we open a package and it's like, do not eat this wrapper. I mean, just stuff like that. People are just so used to being spoon-fed information that level of higher level thinking has been taken out of the expectation for our society. Right. So the expectation for the students is that I'm going to sit here and my instructor is going to tell me everything I need to know. Versus when I mean, this is just me, I'm just an N of one. But when I was going through my primary training, I got like videos and books, and I basically made my own syllabus and learned everything I could like myself. And if I came across a question, then I'd start asking or Googling or doing whatever. But I never expected that the information was just going to be, given to me like that. And I feel like so many people do. And I feel like there's a disconnect between the instructor thinking that the student is motivated enough to learn versus the student thinking that the CFI is going to give them everything they need.
I don't disagree with you on that. I think there's a large part of that comes from the fact that they're paying a large amount of money, and the expectation is I paid for this is what I'm going to get. I've actually heard that. I paid my instructor to teach me this, and he didn't do his job. or she didn't do her job.
I would ask the student, what is your job? What is your role in this
where's
process?
your responsibility? In
Well,
that?
and let me take a middle position on this one, because I go back to my private. When I showed up, I paid a lot of money. I didn't know what to expect. It was a 60.
You don't know what you don't know.
I don't know what I don't know.
That's an expression I use frequently, as well as common sense is not that common anymore.
Well, and so I showed up, and so here's my money. What do I do next? And they handed me a stack of books and everything else. And so I started just devouring the books, but they didn't tell me what to read or whatever. But there's a little bit of both there. So then I show up one day and they said, "You haven't taken the written yet." I'm like, okay, I didn't know I was supposed to, so there would,
that to me is a failure on the school or the instructor's part. They should have at least let you know you're reading this because you have to take a test somewhere down the road,
Right.
and you need to be prepared to take it, or we expect you to take it.
or at what point in the training do you take that test? That would have been good to be communicated.
I will say that one of the things that I was really frustrated at when I was going through all my ratings and certifications and whatnot is that the FAA does not do a very good example or a very good job in their literature. Why are we doing this maneuver? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? It's more of a you're doing this because. So I made it my mission to go through each and every maneuver. Why do we practice these
And
maneuvers?
make it scenario based.
Right. Why are we tested?
Which is
on
how we
this?
were testing now. That's what the ACS was all
Yeah.
about. When we
Correct.
moved away from the PTS to the ACS, it was more
Yes.
about scenario-based testing. So, I joke around on the test to try to put the applicants at ease, and I tell them I'm going along for moral support, but I don't have any morals, so don't expect a lot of support. And so, and they laugh, and then I give them scenarios like we're going for, you're going for a job interview or what have you. And if we don't get there today, obviously you don't get the job, So I give them a reason to go and a consequence if they don't.
That's really good.
You
Yeah.
know, and then I say, and no pressure,
But what will you do?
but what are we going to do here?
You drive.
Exactly. Another famous expression that I use: takeoffs are optional, landings are mandatory.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Well, no, you scud run and get to the interview.
Dan,
Would that pass?
do not listen to
To
Dan.
that. Yeah.
No.
Bad advice.
I am
Bad advice.
joking. But yeah.
But anyway, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. Well, you give them a consequence. You give people realistic scenarios so that they have something like very realistically, like, are they going to use the situational awareness to, make an informed decision? Do they have the
Exactly.
aptitude to be able to do that? And it's not so transitioning kind of to the 121 side of things. You're also a line check airman.
That's correct.
And I mean, even myself, I'm at Envoy, which is American Eagle, which is, American's wholly owned
Essentially-
carrier.
essentially
American
the same
Junior.
training program.
Yeah, it's the exact same training program, effectively, just a different aircraft. And I mean, people go through that training and they wind up not passing because, like, for whatever reason, they're still missing the dots, if you will. They get through all of their, private instrument, commercial, CFI, all of that. And then they make it finally to 121, but they're still missing something. And so it's one of those things where, like you said, some people just, for whatever reason, they're just not meant to do.
This is going to sound kind of corny.
From you? No.
I like corny, so hit me.
But if we go back to the fundamentals of instruction, right, there's 4 levels in the learning process, and that's rote or memorization, right?
Yes.
You can teach a monkey to fly an airplane, right? Understanding, application, and then a correlation. And I think the problem that we're running into when they wash out at that level is they never reached correlation.
Right.
They can't make the bridge between one type of operation and the next operation. So the true application may even be in question now. Do you truly know how to apply the knowledge? Because if you do, you should be able to correlate it to something else.
Right.
And so maybe we're there. With the CFI, I'm kind of giving away some questions I asked on the test on fundamentals of instruction, but I will ask the question of the new CFI applicant, the scenario-based question. You're working with a student who's struggling with landings, specifically crosswind landings. And so you go out and you do, an hour and a half, less than 2 hour lesson on landings, and you probably did 20 patterns, 15 or 20 patterns, and on one landing they've got the wing down but the nose is not aligned, and on the next landing the nose is aligned but the wing's not down, and so they're drifting, and we keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Where are we in the 4 levels of learning? Are we at rote, understanding, application, correlation? Oftentimes they'll get, they're at understanding, they just haven't learned how to apply it.
No, they're
No, they're at rote.
They're at rote.
Yeah.
They're at rote. And I go, during that lesson, did you ever say to them, what do you not understand about this? Because that's often things that we say, right? Commonly as instructors, what do you not understand? Because we're trying to figure out why the student's not learning. So we say to them, what do you not understand? You just answered your question. They don't understand. They've not come out of rote yet and into the understanding level. But that tells me a lot about the aptitude of the CFI. Does he see this? Can he is he picking up the signs here, from the applicant that they're trying to train?
Yeah.
So I use that. It's not a end all be all question, but it tells me a lot about the instructor applicant who's sitting in front of me. Are you going to be able to pick up on the cues the students are giving you?
Yeah.
Because teaching is not more about the knowledge as much as it is being able to transfer the knowledge from one person to the next.
I'm sure you see a lot of that even on the 121 side.
We do see it sometimes. Usually once you're at that level, you're ATP and you've been flying for a regional for a number of years, we don't see a lot of correlation issues. They usually come, in fact, we take the guys that are coming from the feed-through carriers, the flow-through carriers, they generally do really, really well.
Yeah.
Because they've already been through the program.
Yeah.
It's the same program, just a different airframe.
I could be wrong, but I've noticed in a couple of the major, carriers, they're seeing a lot more issues now with approaches and things like that because they've hired a lot of newer individuals that maybe only had 500 hours of that regional flying time. And now you're seeing it with these incidents that are popping up in the news a lot more recently.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you. We are seeing some of that. I can't speak, for my carrier,
right?
Obviously, for obvious reasons. But as an instructor and a check airman, I've seen some things that I was like, oh, that kind of, made me squint an eye and tilt my head a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that's DPE, that's Line Check Airman. Joey, there's a problem with people coming out of the military where the GI Bill doesn't really cover if somebody wanted to have a career in aviation. And so there's a real need for these GIs coming out, transitioning out of the military, and they have no way to really bridge the gap for an aviation career. Can you talk about that problem and then talk about what a solution is?
Yeah. I was not personally in the military. My son was in the military, and this is how it came to my attention, And so when he went to, sign up for flight school, per se, the question was, are you planning to use your GI Bill because it doesn't cover the private? And so that was the first, indication that we got.
It does not cover the private.
Does not cover the private. The Veterans Administration considers that to be recreational.
Interesting. Even though that's your gateway.
That's correct.
Certificate.
Even though
That's step one.
That's step one. Yeah, and I liken it to you can't be a commercial truck driver until you get your driver's license.
Correct.
You can't get your driver's license without a permit. So you've got to go through these phases. Now there are methods. I have found out in recent times that there is a methodology for doing it, but it's long and tedious, and most don't want to put the time and effort into doing it. But it is a vocational rehabilitation type program that you got to go through, in which at that point they will pick it up. But even then, once it does kick in, it doesn't pay for the entirety. So there's a limit as to how much they will pay on flight training. So that puts our servicemen and women at a disadvantage. They wind up having to go and get loans just like everyone else when they've gone and served their country honorably, and they've been promised all of these benefits, but then they get shortchanged in the end. So
So what's the answer?
Well, there's a variety of answers, but my favorite answer is a scholarship that we run in my son's name. the Cloud Dancer Scholarship. So my son, Ashton Johnson, passed away a few years ago, and we started a scholarship in his name and his honor to help those that are trying to do exactly that. And we wind up giving $50,000 a year out, a total of 5 scholarships at $10,000 apiece. We're one of the larger aviation scholarships at $10,000
amazing, yeah.
apiece.
In a very short time.
Yes, yeah, we
I
just
mean, you've
started
only-
in 2021.
Yeah, it's only like 3 years.
Yeah.
He passed in 2021. We started the organization, and we really got going in 2022. So in reality,
It's
this
2
is-
years.
It's just a little over 2 years.
Yeah.
That we've been doing this, and we've given out 10. We have right now, if you look at the total of the 10, we have a 70% completion rate. We renew the first year, and we gave out some scholarships, and not everyone completed, and so we try to modify our selection process. And then the next year, we gave out 6 because we had done so well the prior year in fundraising. So we went ahead and gave 6 scholarships that year, and we have had 5 of those 6 complete, and we have 5 on tap again for this year that we expect to complete.
Tell me about a success story.
Okay.
And so, I mean, in 2 years, you wouldn't expect that there already be some, but there are.
There are some. That's correct. So one of our first recipients that we did, he actually was kind of a special cause because he actually already had a pilot certificate in the military, but it was rotorcraft. So when he come out, he had to convert everything to fixed wing, and he was one of our applicants. And so we made kind of an exception, if you will, because when you come out of the military, you can go to the FAA and show them your credentials, and they'll do a military conversion, right? But they won't convert him to fixed wing.
Right.
He was a rotor wing, so we gave him the money to help him get going on his fixed wing ratings and get him converted over. Once he got those completed, we offered mentorship to him through the variety of people that serve on my board. And next thing you know, he had his foot in an Atlas jet flying cargo. And then shortly thereafter, he made his way to American Airlines, and he's now a 737 first officer at American Airlines.
That's awesome.
And then our next closest success story is we have 2. One that just a year ago, he was last year's recipient. Just shows you the dedication of some of these men and women. We gave him the scholarship, and he has made it through all of his ratings, private instrument, commercial, CFI, II, multi, and is now working at a pipeline school here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex for Envoy. Well, he'll be leading the Envoy if he chooses to go that route.
Nice. So he's in the Envoy Cadet program.
He's not in that actual program, but I think he's planning to go corporate.
Oh, okay.
But the point being is he's well on his way. And then the next one is at Purdue University, and he's doing the same type of deal. So, and then when the others are in various stages of training, they've all completed their private. They're now either instrument or working on their commercials. So they're doing really well.
So once they get through their private with the Cloud Dancer Scholarship, now they can implement the GI Bill to get their commercial and to get their...
That's correct.
Yeah.
Or even get reimbursed, So maybe they took out a loan to get started, as was the case in a couple of our applicants. They took out a loan to get started, but they had not completed their private. They applied, they were awarded the scholarship, and now this money was used to help them complete the private and move forward, and then their GI Bill kicks in. And the VA actually will reimburse, So if they can provide the receipt, so to speak, to show that they've paid the money, they'll reimburse them. But if they haven't completed it, then of course they get the money and do the training.
That's awesome.
All right, if somebody out there is transitioning out of the military and is thinking about aviation and wants to apply, where do they go? What do they do?
So we have a website, clouddancerscholarship.org, and our application process is closed. We just closed it the 15th, so just a few days ago. They can apply again next year. We open it up in May, and we take applications for about 3 months. But anyway, that's where you would go to get the details, is on our website, and just click on the links at the top for the scholarship, and it'll tell you all about it.
Okay.
And that's where people could go if they wanted to contribute
That's
to the
correct,
scholarship.
yeah.
Okay.
So we've got a variety of links on there that you can go to. You can read more about my son and his past, and then you can read about the scholarship. You can read about our previous one. We keep our news and our social media updates there as well. And then our fundraising activities are also shown.
And your biggest fundraising activity is coming up. Tell me about that.
So that's the Black Tie Gala. We've kind of renamed it. The first year was Black Tie Gala. Now we've gone to, with a Texas-based organization, we've gone to Black Tie and Boots. And that seems to be a huge hit, is the Black Tie and Boots. And so that one's in October each year. This year's going to be held in the Stockyards in Fort Worth.
Very nice.
Right? And it is a cowboy themed event. So everyone puts on their fancy hats and boots and vests.
I don't
and
have a
dresses.
cowboy hat.
We can get you a hat.
Okay.
That's not a problem. We actually have a hat sponsor every year that donates a very expensive, it's like $1,000 cowboy hat that we auction off.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this year it'll be at River Ranch in the Stockyards. We have a fairly well-known band. Well, I shouldn't say fairly well-known. They're very well-known because they're in the Texas Hall of Fame. That comes and plays for us each year. And we have a bootmaker, a local bootmaker, is very well-known. He's made a lot of boots for some very famous people. He comes and he actually offers a custom pair of boots for us to auction off as well. And then, a number of donors and it's a lot of fun. I mean, that's the only way I know to describe it. It's just it's a night of a lot of fun. This year we're doing something extra that we haven't done in years past. So the event runs from 6 till into the night, 10 or 11. And afterwards, this year we're going to have an after party at PR's in the Stockyards. And
Oh my.
that was Ashton's hangout. And he was pretty well known there and knew the owner pretty well. And I guess he made enough of an impression that after his passing, the owner had a mural commissioned on the wall inside. So when you walk in PR's now, the photo that you see painted on the wall is my son and his dance partner walking through the streets of Fort Worth leading a horse through town. So we thought that was an appropriate place to hold the after party from the gala.
That sounds fun.
All right. Well, make sure you guys check out the website. Say it again one more time.
It's clouddancerscholarship.org, and it's spelled CLOUDDANCER, scholarship.org.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Joey, for taking some time to come out
absolutely.
this morning. All right, and thank you guys for listening. Don't forget, this is all made possible by our sponsors, like Marshall Protective Services, MPSprotects.com, 67 Designs, 67D.com. They make the best camera, cell phone, and tablet mounts for your plane, your boat, or your car. Colton Mortgage at Colton Taking Off. Flying Eyes. You go to flyingeyesoptics.com. Use our discount code, taking off all caps, one word, for 10% off. Z-Vision, brightest landing and taxi lights out there, xcvision.com. And Jerry Clemens at clemensinsurance.net for any of your insurance needs. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Taking Off Podcast.